Hey everyone, Katie and Sergeant Steele here, and today I want to talk to you about a topic that's actually very important to me in the wargaming community and in life in general. I consider myself a gamer. I like to play video games, board games, tabletop role-playing games, tabletop war games, board games, and just like of all different varieties too, just to note. So whether that's anything as simple as Risk or something as complex as, oh boy, Scythe or any of the other games like that, I've always really enjoyed gaming. But what I think is most important about being in the gaming community is being a good sport. What does that mean? And today I want to talk about that a little bit and from the wargaming perspective, but I'll be touching on some stuff that just applies generally to most games. So to be a good sport means to play fairly, to be positive, and to be respectful. Those are the three key aspects. So I think most of us understand what those three terms generally mean. But how do they apply to wargaming or any other gaming in general? So the first thing to kind of keep in mind about this is that there are things that you should do as best practices in order to foster kind of good sportsmanship. First is to obviously be supportive. And I mean that in a few different ways. One example, say you are in a team tournament and your team is losing, right? And winning was important to you. Do not take that out on your team. Don't be that way. You got to recognize that, losing is part of playing. That is going to happen. In fact, so if everything is well balanced between you and your opponent in terms of strategy and tactics and lists and, kind of generalship overall of your armies and your mastery of the missions that you're playing, you should have a 50-50 chance of winning. That is a good matchup. So that means in a well matched up set of games, you should be losing 50% of the time. Now, that's not how things work. And you're going to be up against lists or opponents that are maybe over or underpowered or have an advantage or disadvantage compared to whatever you're doing. So it always never comes out at 50%, even if you found the perfect crowd to play against that way. But generally, that's how it should work out. So if you're going to play games where winning and losing is an aspect of it, right? Because it's not that way in a group game, in a collaborative game like Dungeons and Dragons, right? Where you're working together to overcome obstacles and to achieve goals and to tell a story. You're not fighting against the other people at the table, except maybe the DM a little bit. But even not really there too. The DM is part of that storytelling. They're just laying the rules for how that's going to work and then crafting the reactions. But in wargaming, right, this is going to be something that you have to deal with is losing. You have to be ready for it. One of the things you can do with that is, one, try to control your own emotions about it. Winning and losing can get emotional. I mean, let's not gaslight each other. Sometimes we get upset when we lose. Sometimes we get upset when we win. More rare. Sometimes we can be happy either way. And it can hit us differently. It depends on what else, other external factors coming in and impacting us. So we need to be ready to control those negative emotions that come up. Not to say we can't express them, but we need to make sure that we express them in a way that is not detrimental to our opponents or detrimental to the community or the game that we're playing. So what we can do is make sure, one, you always do respectful behavior, right? Don't yell. Don't blame your opponent. Don't blame yourself. Don't blame your dice necessarily. Remember, losing is part of it. It's just going to happen. And so sometimes, and this is why I bring this up, blaming your dice or blaming this and that can make your opponent feel like you don't find value in their ability to play the game, that their generalship is not good. They're just winning just because of bad rolls that you are having, right? Or lucky rolls they are having. And it has nothing to do with their skill level. That is about respect to your opponent. So we need to make sure we're approaching losing in a way where we go, well, this is how it's going today. This is, wow, Hopefully, I get lucky maybe on my next roll. You're doing very well. Hey, great job. Hear that? You can also be supportive and you can congratulate your opponent on the good game that they're having or playing. Another thing you can do, and this is what I do every time I do match play, I shake hands with my opponent before and after every game. Every single game I do it, I make a point of it because I want them to know that I absolutely respect them before and I respect them after, no matter what happened in that game. I often do it in my narrative play as well. If any of you have played me at Adepticon or Nova Open or in Pittsburgh or here in Morgantown, then you know that I shake hands before and after my matches. It's just embedded within me because I want you to know that I respect you before and after. The other things we can do is just try to actually come up with things that are kind of fun to talk about, even if we're losing. This can be a way to actually emotionally regulate. One of the things I like to do is a little bit of storytelling, right? So if something blows up, I like to talk about maybe how it blew up or everyone else's reaction to it or what caused the explosion, maybe, right? Did a round penetrate the armor of a vehicle in just the right way and then hit the Ogren's favorite fuel canister that he thought was water but was actually fuel, and then the Chimera just explodes. And my opponent has a good chuckle about it, and I usually do too. And it's a great way to continue having fun even though you are not winning the game, and make sure that your opponent also having fun. Because remember, sometimes people can feel guilty about winning, so we can support them that way. So I kind of combined a little bit about controlling your emotions and being supportive simultaneously. But I want to touch on being supportive again real quick. Being supportive is extremely important. You should congratulate your opponent. You should also mourn with them when things don't go their way. Say the best unit on their list, or the one they just painted the night before in the hotel room before the match, just got blown up or knocked off the table, right? Mourn with them. Say, "Oh man, that's a bummer to lose that unit that way. I hope you're able to make up for it with your intercessors as they come forward here and take those objectives." Or maybe this and that about it. But try to mourn with them. And if they do really well, right? Wow, I didn't realize your obliterators could quite do that to my Bulgren squad. That was fantastic shooting. Excellent job on that. Good target selection. Give them those compliments. This is a great way to show your opponent that you're there for fun, you respect them, you respect the outcome no matter what, and you can help them have a better time too. One of the other key aspects of being a good sport is being willing to learn. And that's what I think is most important about not blaming your dice necessarily or blaming your good plays or your bad plays, your opponent's good plays and their bad plays, is recognize their moments to learn and go, had I done this instead of that, maybe this would have gone differently. Or go, oh, I didn't realize my opponent's army was capable of doing this thing. I've just learned something. That's a positive, right? Everything we learn helps us. So recognize that and recognize those opportunities to be able to learn about the game and learn about the armies and the mechanics and everything that's going on. And be willing to learn maybe even some stuff about yourself and your opponents on a personal level while playing the games. So this is something else to kind of keep in mind. And this can be a key thing to help you out in order to have a more positive attitude and to play better later on. Next thing about this is to make sure you're playing fair. Now, this can look a lot of different ways. What I want to stress to you is to make sure that you are clear with your opponent about rules. You roll your dice where they can see them, and you do not get offended if they ask for a rules clarification, provided there could be times where that may come up as a way of them stalling the game on purpose or trying to get you off-footed. Most of the time, that's not the case. So make sure you're being fair and you're being honest about your rules, honest about your capabilities, and just transparent overall. Remember, the best matchups, the best things that are going to happen in a matchup occur when both players have equal knowledge of what each side can do. So don't try to get any gotcha moments in there just for the sake of the win. Let your opponents know, hey, I got these great stratagems. Hey, this unit has this buff. Hey, you may not be aware that the rules have changed because of a new codex. My unit can now do this. It's really cool and a lot of fun. Or just remind them, hey, I got this silly trick I could possibly do. Just want you to keep in mind on that. Also, make sure that you ask clarifying questions from your opponent. One of the big things I always ask is, hey, do you have a unit that can deep strike within less than 9 inches towards one of my units? It's very important for me to make sure I can screen out well during deployment. So I always ask that one so I can keep that in mind as we play the game forward. I now often ask, and depending on the matchup, more specific questions about specific units or other opportunities that they may have. And I'll usually always try to understand the toughness and wounds characteristic and save of every unit before I start the match also. So make sure that you're being fair and that you're sharing information well. The other way to be fair is, of course, not cheat, but I think that's pretty obvious if we're talking about good sportsmanship. Being fair can also be part of the other aspects I've already talked about being respectful, about being positive, because that's also about being fair. Having a bad attitude can trip up an opponent, and that's not a way to win a game. That's not good sportsmanship. So be fair about that too, and support them in that way, and make sure that they're going to have a good experience as well. So the last part about this that I want to talk on real quick is being a gracious winner. If you do win, don't try to be too boastful about it. Be excited. Make sure to shake your opponent's hand and say, wow, I didn't expect that outcome. Wow, this was really great. This was a good matchup. Thank you for the game. I really appreciate you spending the past 2.5, 3 hours with me. This was a lot of fun, and thank you for that. But don't try to be too boastful. Some people, you got to know who you're playing against. You got to understand their personality or maybe what they're going through, particularly that day, to understand when it may or may not be appropriate to take it a little farther or take it back a little more. And so just try to come somewhere in the middle there if you are winning. So don't try to knock your opponent down about it. And once again, don't say you win just because of your lucky dice. That can be a way of kind of negating your opponent's skill that they've brought to the table, whether it be in list building or strategy and tactics. You're taking away from that. So recognize that as well. You want to make sure that you compliment them too, even though you've won. And also wish them the best on their next games. Or other thing you can do is compliment their army. This kind of falls back to being respectful and being positive. Compliment their hobby while they're playing. So even if you've won, you say, hey man, great game. Awesome. You know, the 85 to 50 is not the most ideal score ever, but I really appreciate the last 2 hours we spent together. Hey, just real quick, can I get a look at that demon prince you have in your army? I really love what you've done on the wings. This is a way to show that your opponent also has something awesome that they've kind of brought forward to the table. And even though maybe they didn't win the game, they have awesome hobby. And right, we're all in this for all different aspects of it. The social side, the play side, the hobby side. So try to be gracious by refocusing the post-game stuff on other things that bring your opponents joy. All right, so this was just a quick dive today. I just wanted to talk about some of the things about being a good sportsman in Warhammer and tabletop gaming. So I hope that you've enjoyed this video. I hope that you've been enjoying all the content I make. I hope that you also go out there and have fun and help your opponents have fun by being a good sport. And that's why I say that as the sign off at the end of all my videos is have fun wargaming. And remember, Cadia stands.